As you might remember from earlier in the course, math is the study or use of numbers and shapes to calculate, represent, or describe things. And math is foundational to the other STEM skill sets. It's a core component of being successful in the other three STEM topic areas of engineering, technology, and science. When you're planning math activities, there are a few things that it's extra important to remember. The first is to look at the math curriculum framework, which we explored together, and find specific skills or competencies to draw from that curriculum framework and build on. Doesn't necessarily need to mean you're teaching them as new strategies, but reinforcing them, strengthening them, and building confidence in them is really important, especially with math, and especially with those more at-risk populations, the underserved populations that we talked about earlier in the training. Building confidence is really, really important, because a lot of kids will get the idea that they're bad at math, and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So offering a lot of praise, offering a lot of positive feedback is very helpful. Providing other elements besides the paper and pencil approach is also helpful. So making sure that in addition to sort of visual approaches like chalkboards or paper and pencil approaches, and auditory approaches like describing or talking about math, that there are tactile elements as well. There are hands-on, try-it type ways to explore these concepts. There are elements that include moving around. And also that you're mixing it up as much as possible, that you're using games and fun ways of exploring these concepts so that the kids are really enjoying themselves. Another major barrier to success in math is the idea that it's boring, or that only boring and nerdy people would be good at it and would like it, which is something you can kind of explode in the fun of your program environment. So take advantage of that to show the kids that math can be fun and it can be cool. And then the last thing on this slide, which is also a very valuable thing to do and which people often forget about or are not comfortable with, is to get familiar with the terminology and vocabulary that's used in a formal math class and use it as much as possible with the kids. You can use it with a synonym right next to it, like you can say the circumference or distance around a circle, so that the kids know what you're talking about. But don't avoid using those terms like circumference, because again, that will make it seem like math is scary and hard and complicated. If the vocabulary just infiltrates into how you talk about things, the kids will increasingly become comfortable with it, and that is hugely, hugely beneficial. Here is an example of a math activity that you could do with your kids. This particular activity is one of our people math activities. This one's called multiplication high fives. So how it works is that you take index cards and you make a deck of cards, and each card has a number on it between 1 and 10, and each number should be in your deck twice. So that means you'll have a total of 20 cards. You'll have 2 cards that say 1 and 2 cards that say 2, and so forth, 1 through 10. So you'll shuffle the deck up and you'll draw 2 cards. And the 2 cards are the 2 multipliers in your multiplication problem. So let's say that you draw a 3 and a 5. Then your multiplication problem for the group is 3 times 5. So you're going to hold up the first card that says 3, and you're going to say that you need 3 volunteers. And 3 children will line up, 1, 2, 3, for the first line. Then you'll hold up your second card that says 5, and you'll say you need 5 volunteers for your second line. And so you'll get 5 kids who line up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your second line. Now what you're going to do is the children in the first line will stand still, and each one will hold up one hand for a high five. The first child in your second line is going to go through the first line and give each person a high five while they count. So again, taking the example of the 3 and the 5, your line of 3 children will hold up their hands, and the first child in the line of 5 is going to say, okay, 3 times 1 is, and then they're going to give the first child 5s and say 1, give the second child 5s and say 2, and give the third child 5s and say 3. So 3 times 1 is 3. Then the second child in the line that used to be 5 children long is going to take their turn, and they're going to continue starting from where the first child left off. So they're going to go over to the line of 3 children, and they're going to say 3 times 2 is 4, slapping 5 to the first kid, 5, slapping 5 to the second kid, and 6, slapping 5 to the third kid. 3 times 2 is 6, and then they'll go stand off to the side or sit down. Then the third child from the line of 5 is going to go over to the line of 3 and say 7, 8, and 9 respectively, as they give 5s to each of the 3 children in the line of 3. And then they're going to say 3 times 3 is 9. And then the fourth child will go 10, 11, 12, and the third child will go 13, 14, 15, and 3 times 5 is 15 will be the answer to your problem. So what you've done is you've done a kinesthetic game that teaches the basics of multiplication, but it also reviews all of the multiplication answers for 3 times 1 through 3 times 5. But to the kids, it's just a fun game. So that is Multiplication High Fives. And the People Math series is all like this. It's kinesthetic games that teach various math principles. So science is the toolkit that seeks to understand the natural world and often needs new different tools or new different approaches in order to get the answers. As a review. So when you're planning science activities, some things that it's most important to bear in mind. First of all, make sure that you're exposing the kids to different kinds of science. It's really common for people to think about nature and the outdoors, underwater, maybe outer space, maybe dinosaurs, maybe bugs. Those are all good things to explore. But make sure that you're exploring as many different kinds of science as possible. The curriculum frameworks divide science up into Earth and space science, which includes planets and the universe. Biology, which is the science of life, living creatures and the systems within them. Chemistry, which is what things are made of, how things are made, and how things react to one another. And physics, which is how things move and interact with one another. So those are the 4 major categories of science. Try to make sure that you're playing with all of them. Use science terminology. Just like with math, it's really important to demystify the terminology. So say things like experiment and reaction and hypothesis. And make sure that you make it clear what those things mean, but use those words regularly so that they are comfortable. And absolutely call the kids scientists. Give them a compliment of saying, "What a great scientist you are. That's such a good question." So that they start to feel excited and proud and comfortable about the idea of being scientists. Remember that before you try something, you always make a guess. This is a really important element of science. If a child asks you a question, have them make a guess. It's okay if the guess is wrong. It doesn't matter. What matters is why. Why whatever happened, happened. And remember that mistakes are how scientists learn. Science is one place in your life where making a mistake is actually a good thing, because it just means that you've learned something new. Making a guess and having it be wrong is a good thing because it means you've learned something new. Having an experiment not go the way you wanted it to go is a good thing because it's an opportunity to learn. So that creates a really neat kind of safety. Like there's really no bad mistake or no bad wrong answer. Everything is just opportunities to explore and learn. Here is an example of a science activity. This activity is called This is a Product of Science. The way that the activity works is that you're going to divide your group of kids into pairs and give each pair a sticky note that says, "This is a product of science." This allows the kids to explore what they know about science and to relate to whatever type of science is most engaging or comfortable for them. So once you've given each pair a sticky note that says this is a product of science, you're going to give the group 5 minutes to wander around the space, the program space or the room, free wandering, looking at all of the things that they can find in the room, thinking about how science has impacted each object in the room. And each pair is going to pick an object to put their sticky note on it that says this is a product of science. Encourage them to try to pick something that will startle the rest of the group. And then once they choose their object, they're going to need to think about how science impacted that object. Because once the 5 minutes is up and everyone has placed their sticky notes, you're going to take turns going around and hearing from each pair of partners while they either tell the group how science has impacted the object they chose, or if they don't know, they make a hypothesis or a guess. And they guess for the group how science might have impacted the object that they chose. Sometimes this creates a lot of new questions or a lot of new hypotheses or guesses. So if that happens, that's great because that gives you opportunities to do group explorations, to go on the internet and do research, to bring books to the program so that you can read the books together and look at what the answers to those questions are, or even to do an experiment or an inquiry-based project together to the answers. So that's what we would love. We would really love to see that happen.